Hello, everyone. This is the Dallas Design Sprints podcast. This is the first podcast of the year that we're doing, and we're doing it on my birthday. And really, I think the only way I could have ever gotten my guest onto a podcast like this is to actually have it on my 50th birthday, the first one of the year. So this actually is a big deal. Otherwise, I never would have gotten the time of day, I think, from Dana Publicover. She is the founder of Tiny Pinata. She's also the author of a new book that's out called Empathy at Scale. And I'm very happy to have her on the podcast. Dana, thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me and happy birthday.
Well, thank you. The part of the thing about having your birthday, especially at this age and in a modern age, is that I am inevitably going to have to go back into Facebook particularly and go through the 30 people in my network from like way back when that are all wishing me happy birthday so I can say thank you. Because the one thing you don't want to do is leave them hanging, but be
So
that
you're
as it
saying that
may.
people loving you creates work for you. That's what you're
Yes.
saying.
Well, it also creates work if they hate me. So it could be like a
Oh,
dual-edged sword. It could be both
true.
ways. If they all say like, yeah, there you go, and say whatever they want to say, then I have to address that too. Well,
Something old man, something.
yes, you can fill in the blanks because they're far-reaching in terms of their commentary. So let's get into what you're all about and who you are. In fact, let's have you do a short introduction for those of you who don't know um, anything about you or that are meeting you for the first time. Please give a short introduction about who you are, what you're about, and what you're currently doing.
Sure. I'm Dana Publicover. I recently published a book, self-published, by the way, Empathy at Scale.
That's very admirable, by the way, and I'm actually planning on going that same route. But
It's very hard, Robert. It's very hard. I had to learn things I had no idea I would ever do. I had to typeset this thing by myself in InDesign. Illustrator, one of those. Uh really hard, and just learning about how ISBNs work and digital rights management, things I don't care about. So,
so
I don't
I
recommend
will
it.
definitely take some of your time later on, and we could talk about it because I am serious. I was thinking about doing a book on virtual design sprinting,
Yes,
um,
do it.
and have written some chapters already. But I know that every single person I talk to has gone down the road of writing a book has been like it is a royal pain in the ass, but
Yes.
it is something that once you're done, you can say like, okay, it's finally we got it going and it's fantastic. So please
Yeah.
continue.
I just had that moment of relief, I think Friday afternoon, where I was holding it in my hands and I said, "Okay, now what? What am what am I gonna do with all this free time all of a sudden? Because it's like another job."
If I may suggest something, it seems that more or less the book acts as a marketing tool.
Yes.
So part of it is being able to leverage that in a way where it's a PR piece where it's like, okay, well, we're talking about empathy at scale and making people more aware of it to the point where it actually brings you into the room for speaking engagements or for podcasts like this, and getting your name out there so people understand what you're all about and what you represent.
That's the dream. That's what I'm hoping for, and hopefully people find my message compelling and they're able to connect with it. Which I guess I didn't even answer your question about that. The message is about change makers, and change makers are the people that I refer to in the middle of an organization. They're not yet leaders, and maybe they don't want to be leaders, but they're sitting there, they're at their jobs, they're the cubicle warriors. They have so much to do that it gets in the way of them doing the job they were brought in to do.
Mhm.
So instead of creating this brilliant strategy you were supposed to come in and revolutionize the department with, you're stuck in meetings, you're stuck in tasks, and you're not free to do the work that you should be doing and the work you were meant to be doing. These career making, these game changing projects that would really benefit both the company and your career personally. And I feel like the people in the middle, these change makers, I call them change makers because they have the greatest opportunity for change in an organization. It's not going to come from the top. It's not going to come from the leaders who are on their way out. They've been there too long to take risks. And so, director of marketing, marketing manager, HR manager, people in this middle segment here can affect real change organization wide. They just need to realize they have that power to do that. And this is hopefully this impetus to change this manifesto for better work, helping people make those changes and, starting small.
And in the book, you talk about you give recommendations at different intervals, but one of the themes that was part of the book is by making actionable recommendations on how to make meetings better, like how to make them more meaningful. Do you want to go into that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I also want to go on the record and say that I'm not anti-meeting by any means. I know it's fun to hate meetings. We all hate them, but we need them and they do serve a really valuable purpose. So I'm not anti-meeting. However, I'm anti the state of meetings as they are currently. So I think we can make them better. And one of the ways that I think we can do that is by planning them better. Instead of sending out an invite to everybody you think should be involved and say, okay, next Thursday from 2 to 3, because the default seems to be an hour always. Excuse me. So inviting all those people, getting them in a room, putting some vague topic in the invite, and then just talking in circles for an hour. That's not productive. I see meetings as a place for action. If you think about how much it costs to have all of those people in the room at the same time, all those salaries, all those numbers just clicking through, you're wasting so much money and so much time, and you're not really getting anything done in that meeting. You leave the meeting with tasks to be done. I say instead, set a purpose for the meeting, set a goal, create an agenda, and send that out in advance. If people then read that and say, you know what, I'm not sure I need to be a part of this meeting, great, don't come. That's fantastic. But I also don't think your meetings need to be an hour. So let's say, here's a good example. Your goal is to determine where to hold your annual meeting. That's a 15-minute meeting to me. That's not an hour. It's not a long, meandering discussion. In advance of that 15-minute meeting, I would ask people to come up with an idea of where they think the annual meeting should be held, and maybe like 2 or 3 sales points is why they think that should be the place. So in that 15-minute meeting, the first 5 minutes, and you start on time. This is very important. Meetings should start and end on time. All right. So in that first 5 minutes, you got 5 people in there. Each person gets a minute. Quick pitch round, 1 minute. Talk about where you think the annual meeting should be held and why. Use a timer. Keep it tight. After that 5 minutes, you've got 7 or 8 minutes for discussion. Just, quick round robin. Let's talk about the benefits and cons of each location presented. Then you vote. You've reached a consensus. You end the meeting. That's 15 minutes. No more needs to be said about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very actionable thing you can do. So the takeaways from that would be start and end on time, have a purpose and a goal, send it out with the agenda in advance. How many times are you typing up the agenda on your way into the meeting, right? Send it out in advance. Let people know what to expect and let people decide whether they need to be there. So running meetings like this, maybe you'd run like 5 or 6 meetings this new way. You become known as the person who throws a good meeting that doesn't waste people's time, and you get shit done. Did I just get you your explicit rating?
I was waiting for it. I mean, we talked about this off. We talked about this off air, but there's a missing chapter in Empathy at Scale where it basically showcases the opposite of empathy, and that thing is like a torrent of cuss words. And I know that didn't make the book, probably because it would have been, it would have been something else. But I'm glad that at least we're peppering it in this podcast a little. So I think we'll be okay.
We are just sprinkling it, for adults only. This is a empathy after hours
for the tweens out there that had happened to stumble on podcasts. We're in good shape, but
they're listening still.
Definitely not for 2-year-olds that are still bumbling through life and figuring it out. So in that example that you gave about basically making meetings more efficient and not wasting people's time, how does empathy kind of fit into that model? Like, where does empathy kind of equate to the actions that you were describing?
That's an excellent question. So the way that I see it, designing a meeting empathetically means considering the experience of everyone attending the meeting. This this can be displayed in ways like if you're having a meeting around 12 o'clock, anywhere from like really, let's say 11:30 to 1:30, you should provide food. If you can't provide food, have the meeting at a different time. People are scheduling meetings back to back. So if your meeting ends at 12, chances are they've got a 1 o'clock. People aren't blocking off their lunch hours. So just realizing empathetically that if someone is really hungry, they're not bringing their best self to their meeting. Think about how you would feel. Think about how you feel when you sit in a meeting and you just read slide after slide and they're being read to you. They could have sent you that slide deck. You could have consumed it on your own time and you wouldn't have been held hostage in that room. Things like temperature, flow, just thinking about the meeting as an experience itself. That's something that's, I mean, it's in our circles, it's something that's talked about a lot, but externally, it's really not a factor. People don't consider the experience of the people attending their meetings. And then just realize that people's time is so precious. When I'm spending a 30-minute meeting, back when I was a corporate, I'm going to say a corporate slave, back then, I would spend 30 minutes in a meeting I didn't need to be in that wasn't relevant to me. And that meant that I was getting 30 minutes behind more on my work that I had to do, which meant that's 30 minutes you've taken away from me with my kids after hours.
Yep.
Yeah.
So would you say, or based on your experience, if you deploy empathy and showcase that and use it with your interactions at work, do you find that it tends to be reciprocated?
That's a great question. I have no idea. I don't think I've tried it in the workplace where I could see it come back to me. What I have done is led people through empathetic research for their employees and the people on their team, which and there's a huge section on the book of how to do this research. Taking people through that research, understanding the needs and the motivations and the challenges of the people they work with and the people who are experiencing these problems with them and trying to fix it for them in an effort to get better results. So better participation in a human resources initiative, for instance, like greater benefits, benefits enrollment, um, better delivering information to salespeople so that they feel more informed. The reciprocation part, I'm not sure factors into it because I'm not sure employers are looking to have their employees reciprocate empathy to them. And maybe that's just because I have a different view of the leadership dynamic with the people below, but I'm not sure that that's something I've considered up to this point.
So that was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
What leadership roles do you think empathy produces a force multiplier or makes their role more meaningful?
As in the leaders having empathy or empathy
Yes.
for the leaders?
Like, would it be more advantageous for someone who's native to empathy? Like that's not just part of who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Is it better for someone in, like, say, marketing to have that trait, or for someone who's a CEO to be able to leverage that? What, in your opinion, is a role that really could take somebody's native abilities to empathize with users and with other people, and be able to deploy that in a fashion that not only benefits other people but the business as well?
I would say maybe someone in the operations, someone who's working on the day-to-day employee experience, people who are building internal programs such as maybe innovation accelerators, internal entrepreneurship programs. I know that's a buzzword we use a lot, but where you're asking something of employees above and beyond just their job, empathizing with that experience to help bring their participation, to help inspire them and motivate them to carry out some of the tenets of the company's own values in an effort to grow the business. Somebody you want to come up with this next revenue stream, empathizing with how they might do that and how you might change their role or adjust their day-to-day company experience in order to encourage that work from them and to get the best from them.
What are some characteristics of a business or organization that is using empathy at scale?
People who have a reputation in recruiting for being somewhere everybody wants to be because they've accommodated this work-life balance. They're treating people like human beings. They're letting people spend time with their family. We hear horror stories of these Silicon Valley giants, I won't name names, where they've built these restaurants on the grounds so that people's families can come have dinner with them so they can get back to work after that pretty quickly. And that's an accommodation. They have made an accommodation, and that is an empathetic contribution. However, I would say the employee and the employee's family probably would rather have them at home for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're looking at even in looking at gender accommodations, places where women feel like they're encouraged into positions of leadership and where maternity leave isn't seen as a vacation, where it's longer than 6 weeks. I know some people don't even get that. Things like that, I would say, are representative of an empathetic company who really understands how to get the best out of their employees. It's not just beanbag chairs and ping pong tables in a room. That doesn't make you Pixar.
Got it. And let's have some fun with your own business, Tiny Pinata. If you experienced a growth phase with your company and now you're 25 employees, my question to you would be is how would you deploy empathy at scale within Tiny Pinata in that situation?
That's a good question. This is interesting. This is a conversation that's been coming up in one of my mastermind groups. I might be anti-scale, and I know that's maybe an unpopular opinion, but I'm afraid that I would lose what I have if I were to scale beyond a certain point.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm right there with you because I
Yeah.
prefer to be a company of one, and I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you read Company of One?
Paul Jarvis's book. Yep.
Yeah. I wondered about that. I mean, that said, I, as a person who tends to resist any kind of structure that I feel is imposed upon me, so I'm outing myself as a millennial and a rebel here, I would try to make sure that I brought people on board who also wanted to experience their work that way. And I would try really hard to manage my expectations. I know that I am probably one of the most difficult people to work with. I've had
Now, wait a minute. I know. Wait, stop. Hold on. Hold. Now, I have not seen anything on social because I'm big in social media. I haven't seen anything where it says I would never work for Dana Publicover because of X. I've not seen that. So, um, I will assume that's an unfounded opinion where in reality, actually, you're quite pleasant to work with, but keep going.
Every intern I've ever had has quit within a couple weeks. I've had a couple assistants here and there that didn't work out. My problem is that I hold people to the same standards I hold myself to, and that's not sustainable, and it's not kind.
And it's not it's not their company.
It's not their company, no, and I can't expect people to do that. So I think it's, yeah, I say this as a person who's currently contracting a publicist and a social media manager and things like that. And I'm starting to build these relationships. I'm trying to manage them empathetically. I'm trying to give my own advice to myself and try to structure those relationships and those duties and those expectations more realistically. But I'm not saying I'm Anna Wintour, but probably close. I would not work for me.
I think it's a matter of being able to be aligned on outcomes, but knowing that circumstances beyond someone's control might change those outcomes. For example, I had somewhat of a similar mindset with the first official GVDS we did in terms of people participating. So this was during the free period where we weren't charging anything. And someone had both their father die and their uncle die. in like less than a week. And this person was still, do you still want me to join? And I was like, no, absolutely not. You take care of what you need to do, get to India. I was literally being prescriptive,
Yeah.
saying, I don't want to hear from you for 2 months. I don't. That kind of thing is so, uh, it's so like leveling in terms of its impact to an individual typically, that for me to be selfish in that regard would be irresponsible. At the same token, if someone just flat out doesn't correspond after a month or two and doesn't say anything or tell me that they're going to be a part of something, that's okay too, because there's a piece of the puzzle I can't assume for the other person. So I will say that point of view has been something, and I'm going to fall back on age a bit. It falls back to experience and knowing that you just don't know people in terms of like what they're dealing with.
Sure.
And really, to your point about empathy at scale, I don't practice empathy. I'm not empathetic by nature, but I understand when someone's in a situation where they can't operate 100%, and I have to respect that. So if I
Sure.
can respect that situation and get out of my zone of like importance, I've learned that you tend to learn a lot more perspective that way, but that's only after going through the motions. So the instinct is to basically say like, well, God damn it, this is the deadline. I need to get it done. And some people operate from that, and that's fine. But
Yeah.
I just know that it has to be a little bit softer than that for you to really connect with people and on an empathy scale or an empathy kind of fashion.
On the other side of the coin, you can't project your own desires and values on another person and make the assumption that perhaps you in that situation would not be able to work and bring your full self to work. And perhaps somebody else might want to throw themselves entirely into work so as not to deal with what's going on in their head. I mean, I am also not naturally empathetic, and that's why I have such an obsession with it. It's it's true.
Well, join the club
Um,
because I'm right there with you. It's when I was doing when I was had 15 full-time employees and I was a manager, there was somebody that came to me that was just breaking down because they weren't getting the work they were done. And my instinct wasn't to give a hug or to say like, I know, dear, I know. It was more like, it's okay. No, it's like, and my instinct would be just to ask the question and ask for more data. It wouldn't be to like connect.
right. So you want information.
I'm looking to understand the foundation or the origin of kind of where it comes, but I still want to listen. I
Yeah.
still want to, because that's the whole intent of the conversation. So that's how I am too. I don't think it's a
Yeah.
bad thing. It's just the way I'm wired. So
My default is troubleshooting mode, problem solving mode, which I've that's the kind of listener I am, and I've learned through therapy and through friendships and through marriage that that's not what some people need. Sometimes they just want to talk and they just want to be heard. And empathetically, I don't want to just talk and be heard. I want to work with somebody and solve my problems. And so I had to learn that not everyone feels like I feel. And
mhm.
I talk about this in the book, there's a zap of empathy. It's that sudden realization of the other person's perspective. And I'm fascinated by that zap, by realizing you had the story wrong because you assumed it, or
Yeah,
you were telling your story for someone else. And I think I think it's a really interesting experience when you have that realization of empathy, or that realization of a lack of empathy even.
yeah, and being forgiving of yourself, knowing that this is out of all the things that you could do wrong, it's like the transgressions of not being able to understand certain things about an individual at certain moments. They're blips in the radar. I think the only time that it tends to be a problem is if it's continual,
Yeah.
where you continually not recognize that a certain situation occurs. Then there needs to be a little bit of an audit of yourself, but in self-awareness. But it comes with time. Most people are because human beings are by nature very forgiving. It'll just come up like that. So
It's knowing and choosing to do nothing about it that I think is the real problem. Knowing that your perspective is limited and choosing not to dig deeper into that and find the other perspective.
mhm. So I wanted to ask you about Tiny Pinata. I know I touched upon it briefly. I wanted to understand the nature of the business, why you'd set it up, what you're actively doing for services and products with that company, so people can get an idea of what kinds of things you're interested in and what you provide for people.
Sure. Yeah. So my goal initially was just to run workshops and design sprints. And as I do those, and as I'm running a workshop and I start to uncover a problem, maybe in a problem discovery workshop or a challenge uncovering workshop, I start to come up with solutions myself. And yeah, I know. And I
Mm.
think really highly of myself. It's clear. So, one of the things I've done is kind of accommodate for that participation. So, instead of just facilitating this workshop as a neutral third party, I'm joining the team as something I've come to be known as a thought partner.
Mm.
And I really, really like that phrase. And I'm hoping it doesn't become a disgusting buzzword in the next 2 to 5 years. But joining people as a literal partner in thought and helping them work through this together. So I'm on their team. I'm this supplemental limb to help them figure out this challenge, bringing in my fresh perspective, bringing in my different experiences. I'm not entrenched in their company culture. I haven't drank their Kool-Aid yet, so I don't have the same limitations they do, and the same barriers to thought that they do. So I'm able to help open this up and help them solve this problem. And because of that, I've started doing these longer term strategy projects as well. So workshops and then these one-on-one, one on team, smaller organizational strategy projects.
So, how do you showcase this thought leadership outside of contract work?
I don't know what you're asking me.
That's okay. How does someone who is not talking to you like I am right now on a podcast, or doesn't
Yeah.
have you in a room with a team, how does someone offline figure out that you are this thought leader, that you are someone that is a perfect problem solver, or is perfect for this situation?
Yeah, I don't know. And I hope you know, because I've been working on my own marketing strategy in the background, but it's the cobbler's children have no shoes. We never work on our own things. We're always working on clients' things up until now. So I've been Tiny Pinata since April 1st of 2019,
Hmm.
just a little under a year. Up until now, all of my business has been word of mouth.
And that will
That
end.
Yes, no, it's coming to an end. we're we're nearing the limitations of my own contacts. And so because of that, I've been working a little bit on my own PR. This book obviously is a huge help to that. But figuring out how to share that message with people who don't know they need my help and don't know that something like that exists. And that's kind of a limitation.
So I've been working in this space for over a year and a half. We should have an offline conversation about that. It takes a lot of work,
Sure.
but there is an inflection point that happened for me. It happened in December, where I have so much inquiry and so much opportunity that it's becoming a problem.
Hmm.
I have the
And this is just for
opposite.
design sprints?
No, I
Oh,
actually don't do design sprints anymore.
this is
I'm
interesting.
I it's what's really what's really interesting is that through the work, I've actually changed not only my service options, like what I offer people, but I now know what the market wants from me in terms of positioning. But I've only
Oh,
gone through that by
interesting.
going through all the work.
Yeah.
Um, so my focus from the time I started in May 2018 to now is completely different. But at the same time, I'm at a point now where I'm about to enter February, and I've got to make a couple of choices in terms of like strategy, which direction I should go in. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure I know which way, but the inquiries are coming in fast and furious, and
That's
that's probably,
amazing.
well, it's a blessing in disguise, but it also requires nurturing. It's like they say your business is another child. You just
Mhm.
have to take care of it and make sure that it's being taken care of, and things do eventually happen, but you can't control it. And right now I'm about to enter a phase where it's like, oh. So yeah, let's have an offline conversation.
Sure.
I can basically tell you what I've experienced, and then you can pick and choose what you think works for you and Tiny Pinata going forward. Um,
With all this work coming in, you might have to scale.
Well, here's so let me touch upon that because that actually touches on your book as well with empathy at scale. So there's a correlation with that. I'm going to showcase. So I'm a big proponent of servant leadership. I always have been.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it for a long time, but I didn't know it was a thing or like a topic. And with the GVDS, there's a lot of people that want to help, but that has to be managed. And I tend to look for people where I see someone who has some native talent that seems to align with what the GVDS needs, but I go all in on that individual and try to be that person's advocate and try to do as much as I can for that person. Not that I expect anything in return, but that I know that if I get this person in a position where their name gets out there, they practice in what they know, but are learning more about it, and you see that they do it without your encouragement. That's the kind of thing I'm drawn to.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's coaching, I don't know what it is, but I want that person to succeed more than anything and then let go. And then they have their life, they're at a better standard of living, they're able to afford different things, they can look forward to the future. Then I feel like I've actually contributed in some meaningful way, at
That's
least at
awesome.
this stage.
That's like
So
advocate mentorship.
absolutely. So
Yeah.
and the GVDS, there's like a handful of people. I think there's like 10 or 20 people that I've always kept my eye on, that I would move heaven and earth for just it's just innate. I don't know why I do it, um, but that's part of how I guess I project empathy is that I try to see somebody in a situation that's not optimal, and I try to help them in any way I can that
Yeah.
makes sense for that individual without being too prescriptive. In a half an hour, I'm talking to somebody who I think is just a firecracker. She's got all she if you looked at somebody who's like a natural leader that could really take a group of people and propel them in a direction, and they would march in lockstep behind her, that individual's got all the ingredients, but she's positioned incorrectly, and she's in a system where she's not really, either she doesn't have either the means or the knowledge to kind of get there, but
Hmm.
she also has a bit of self-doubt, which is natural, especially given where she is on whether or not she can go in that direction. So it really is just basically trying to get perspective. But that's how I feel I can be empathetic, is like knowing that someone's in a place in their professional career that's not optimal, but
Yeah.
being able to do whatever I can in the time that I have to try to do something that helps move the needle, whether it's editing
Troubleshooting,
something.
career
Exactly.
counseling. Yeah.
What I was saying, what I'll bridge to you is, you mentioned that you're into problem solving.
Yeah.
Um, I would love to see more of that, and like examples of what that does. Like what kind of problems do you solve? How do you approach it? What's your thought process? Because that to me is something where it's not me, but it's an interesting perspective.
Hmm.
Um, and especially if it's central to your theme of being a thought leader or somebody who's into that thought arena where you're doing more brains work than hands work.
Yeah.
Um, so there.
Cool.
That was me taking up the last 6 minutes of the podcast in a ramble fest. Although somebody has said ramble feast, so it depends on your
Ramble
point of view on
feast.
where you're going to go. So I guess we can wrap this up in a way where I'm not talking like all over the place.
Okay.
Where if people want to find out more about you and what you're all about, um, where should they go online?
They can go to the Tiny Pinata website, which is tinypinata.com. Don't try to type the tilde, it won't work. It's just a regular in for my Spanish speaking friends who know what the word tilde means. And
Would you
then,
say tiny pinata different in Spanish?
I don't know. I don't speak Spanish.
Okay, neither do I. I'm just guessing. It's like tiny
Yeah.
pinata. That's that.
Pinata. You just got canceled, I think.
I did. Well,
All
hey,
of your Spanish speakers
I'm
have
already
now.
explicit thanks to you, so I might as well be like offensive at the same time.
If I
So I'm
can leave
good.
any podcast with that gift, that's what I bring. I just want people to know that's what I
You
bring to
just
the
put
game.
explicit tags on every podcast you have. You just
Yep.
like,
Limiting your listenership since 2019.
I feel blessed.
Yeah. But yeah, you can find me there, tinypinata.com, and you can email me, dana@tinypinata.com. I answer questions from people all the time. For a person who loves to solve problems, I love to give my own opinions too. So I absolutely will answer your question. The socials, easy to find. There are 2 Dana Publicovers. There are 2 of them. One of them is the mayor of a town in Canada. That's not me.
And a complete fraud.
Is she? I think she was there first. I don't know. I married into the name.
Well, we can basically disparage her now because she's never going to reach out to us.
Well, she gets some of my email and apparently handles it poorly.
Oh, well then,
Yeah.
screw
So
her.
don't email her, or do email her. Let's.
Yes, please tell her that Canada's needs a better representation and definitely a better last name than what she's kind of putting out there.
Yeah.
Where can people find the book if they're interested in learning more about that?
On Amazon, it's in Kindle and paperback format. I would love some reviews.
It has 2 right
Throw that out
now.
there. Yeah.
In fact, when I was checking it out,
And I
before
didn't write
this-
either of them, just FYI.
yeah, she did not pay for those to actually.
Did not
happen.
pay for those. Yeah.
No.
You can buy them. They're expensive.
So, and you can also get it on Shopify on your site, Tiny Pinata, correct?
No, incorrect. Not anymore. That was just for pre-order.
Oh, well, now you've missed the window for pre-order, then you have to go to Amazon, correct?
It's true. It's Amazon just disregards your launch date and publishes it when they see fit. So it's technically already published on Amazon. It wasn't supposed to come out till February 10th. So get it early. Get it.
And would you mind if I read the reviews that are currently on Amazon for people to give people an idea of like a third party what they think? Okay, so this is from
and you've read it too, right? So you can give your opinion.
I can
in Amazon form.
But I'm wondering if I should deploy empathy when I actually do this review, or should I be my own self, which is like pretty much cut and dry, black and white.
How meta of you.
Okay, so Leah Williams says it's a must read. Empathy at Scale allowed my team and I to think more practically and intentful. I think we have a tendency to try to solve problems the same way every time, not realizing this is why we are getting the same types of solutions. Empathy is something every team, workplace, and industry can use more of, and viewing it as a resource is a great way to start making a case for it internally. Having empathy in who you're speaking to and how they wish to be spoken to, but also how to solve a problem for someone and make sure that the solution works for them. Wow. That's pretty
Full
good.
disclosure, I know her.
Oh, you do?
I should just say
See,
that.
now you see, I was setting it up so that this was like an unbiased like party that just bought the book. And
but if people find out later that I know her, then they're going to get suspicious. So you have to get ahead of the story.
Somebody's going to listen to this podcast, take time out of their day, figure out how you and Leah Williams are connected, and go, you know what? I knew it wasn't true. Not going to happen, Dana. Not going to happen.
I just feel like I have to be honest.
That's okay. Hey, you're more than welcome. And if you want that honesty to spill over into like anything else about this conversation, and like if you are totally bored with it, we can end it right now.
I'm not bored yet, but I'll let you know. Keep you posted.
Okay.
Don't get comfortable.
Good. All right. So Dana, thank you very much for joining the podcast. I really do appreciate it. And I hope you are very successful with the book. And I look forward to seeing more of your opinions and also your perspective in 2020 this year.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this. And thanks for telling people about my book. It's awesome.
More than welcome. And I'll talk to you later.
Awesome. Bye.